Welcome to Syntax. On this Monday Hasty Treat, we're going to be talking about finding your inspiration and stealing design. And not necessarily stealing like a thief or some sort of devious person, but stealing in the type of way that the great quote of, great artists steal, the classic quote that people say. But in reality, we're going to be talking all about what you can glean from other people's work to make your work better, to enhance your skills, to enhance your coding abilities, to enhance your design abilities, all of those things without going into the realm of plagiarism here. My name is Scott Tolinsky. I'm a developer from Denver. With me, as always, is Wes Boss. Wes, what's up?
Yeah, I excited to talk about ripping people off and where it's okay, because we often get that. Like, is it okay to be inspired by somebody's website? At what point does it go from being inspired and saying, "Oh, I love that effect. I want to do that in my own website," or "Oh, that's a really neat function." Also, it's also bizarre in open source in general, right? Like, design is one thing, but like actual code where we publicly put it available, where do you draw the line on being okay and needing to credit versus just being fine with being inspired with how things are done?
Yeah, totally. It is a fine line between ripping somebody off completely and finding inspiration. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking about what types of things that are okay to nibble on, what types of things are not okay to steal outright, what we've had stolen and, what felt bad when it was stolen from us, but also just kind of general rules of thumb. And then we're going to get into where you can find your own inspiration and how to catalog and collect inspiration. But if you're looking for inspiration on fixing issues in your code, Sentry.io/syntax, give Sentry an install on your application today, and you will find every bug that happens on your site before your users have to let you know that those bugs are even happening. You even get a video session replay to see how that bug took place. You can see the infraction in action. Ooh, I think Sentry should pay me for that one. Okay, so let's get into it. Great artists steal. I think Carlos Mencia said that. What is okay to steal and what is not okay to steal? First and foremost, in my mind, the stuff that is okay to steal is the little micro aspects of any particular design or website. And it doesn't necessarily have to be web. You can be inspired by a book, a movie poster. You can be inspired by anything. And from those micro aspects that exist could be all kinds of things, from color palettes, right? You could look at a color palette of a website and say, man, I really like the way that these colors work together. That's perfectly acceptable. Font stacks. I'm not a typographic master. Font stacks are these things that are kind of tricky to put together. And some people have spent a lot of time and a lot of money putting together really nice font stacks. You can even buy some pre-made font stacks and stuff like that. So for me, I'm almost always seeking inspiration for font stacks.
Yeah, fonts. I find most of my new fonts by landing on a web page and getting that ooh, like, what is that? Like when you have to inspect Element to figure out what are they using there. And often I find some really neat ones. And almost always when I find a really neat one, it's something from Creative Market, which I also find a really good spot to sort of peruse for new and exciting fonts.
You know what? It's kind of in a weird low-key spot that I've been finding great free fonts lately, Wes.
Yeah.
Behance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've downloaded a couple off of there. Yeah, Behance is like Deviant Art used to be back in the day, right?
Deviant Art.
Deviant. Oh, yeah. That was one thing that I was saying wrong in my head for years. And then I was like, oh, it's Deviant. Like, why did I think it was Deviant?
That's so funny. I love that. There's so many words I do that too. It's awesome.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, man. So how do you find them on Behance? I guess because the font authors, what do you call someone that makes a font? An author? No, there's got to be a cool word.
There has to be a cool word for that.
Let's find this out. Let's ask AI. What do you call like a Foundry type designer.
Type
I thought there would
designer.
be like a cool like font flamer or something like that. But
That'd be
no,
kind of, yeah.
type designer. Anyways, type designers go on Behance and show their wares.
Yeah, you know what? I've been finding more or less. I find them elsewhere. I'll find them in design inspiration sites, and then they'll be like, or even on Instagram, and it'll be like, here's a link to my free typefaces, and then they're usually selling them on Gumroad or something like that. But they're showcasing them on Behance, which is it's a funny. It feels like it's a site that's been around forever, but definitely one people are still
Yeah.
using to show off stuff. on.
Yeah. On that same note, I find that a lot of these designers are now like, first of all, there's so many indie designers making really nice fonts, which is
Totally.
cool.
Yes.
And they'll often let you download like a free one that is missing like the numbers, or like one of the letters will have like a trial. And I love that because like previously, like what do? They let you try it, they let you type it into the box and show you what your word will look like. Like, no, let me download it, let me play with it in Figma. And if this is what I decide what I would like to go forward with, then you go buy it. You download the full thing and install it. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. So I think a big aspect of the stuff that is okay to quote unquote steal or borrow or gain
Yeah.
inspiration from is stuff that when you look at a website, you say, ooh, how did they do that? What are they doing here? What kind of fonts are they doing here? Let me dive in. And along that same line is like type scale. If you look at like a website and you really like how the size of their headings and paragraphs all fit together, sometimes I'll go to a website and I'll be like, I really like this type scale, and I like this font from over here, and I like this color palette from over here. And you can combine all of those things from various sources. What you're doing is you're taking ideas from various places and combining them to make something new. You're remixing design. You are forming something new from other ideas elsewhere. We'll talk about when that can become a problem, but type scale is one of those ones I think low-key is a good way to become a better designer, is to learn about type scale from people who are doing it well. And one of the best parts about working on the web here is that we do have the ability to inspect element. We have the ability to look at the source, the CSS, and you can straight up jack someone's type scale. And I don't really have too much of a problem with that personally.
Yeah, I find the point you just made there about like re-implementing designs as a great way to learn. Use it for font scale, but literally for anything. Like if you find a website that looks awesome, or they're doing an effect where like it's different blurs or a really cool border trick or something like that, just simply re-implementing that yourself. Like right click, like what was it? The warp.dev, is that the website? I had made a TikTok probably about 6 months ago, which is, I landed on it. I was like, ooh, how did they do that? You know, they had this really cool outline around their elements. I think they took the effect down now, but I'll link up the actual video. And I was like, I have to learn how they did that. And it's just so much to learn when you both, if you're trying to design it in Figma or whatever, or if you're trying to like actually implement it with HTML, CSS, JavaScript.
Yeah, totally. It can make you like a better designer to see how that stuff works together. But again, it's also like taking care of those things in your own design. If you might not have the ability to do that stuff by hand, is a great way to have your things look much nicer. I think that's a one key area where their designs really fall apart, is spacing and typography. And let me tell you, I am not a typesetter. I typically get my inspiration from elsewhere for things to look nice in that regard. You can also steal general layout patterns. I mean, layout patterns, how many layout patterns exist? And if you go to like many to-do applications, like actual to-do, like Todoist or Height or any of these things, or even like Linear or those types of project management tools, Notion, how many different project layouts really exist? And some of these applications can feel the same, but they don't always feel the same. And many of the reasons why they don't is because of the little things, the typography that they're using, the color palettes, the size and stuff like that. But they're generally sharing layout patterns. And common layout patterns are a good thing to have when working in application type design, because these things are typically how people are expecting applications to work and function. And just because you are borrowing a common layout pattern or a common application pattern doesn't mean that application is going to always automatically feel the same as the thing you are taking it from or gaining inspiration from.
Yeah, especially when a new pattern that somebody stumbles across helps your end users. Like if it makes for a better end experience, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, can everybody please implement this? Like I did a video the other day on Century's date picker for ranges, and they allow you to type in like 4 days or 32 minutes, and you can just filter very quickly for a range based on typing in minutes or days. And I was like, man, can everybody steal this? You know,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
needs to implement this pattern or specific layout. So I'm a big fan of when people take patterns and reuse them across multiple apps.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just vibes. You can look at a website like the Syntax site and say, this site has some like grunge vibes to it. It has some like kind of askew vibes. There's some interesting things going on there. It's a little punk rock in some ways, right? Those are just vibe aspects. You could glean just the vibes from one app and say, this is the type of aesthetic I'm going for, but different color palette, different font stack, different layouts, different whatever. And these are all the different things that you can take and re-implement. I highly encourage you that if you are not a good designer to start thinking in this way when you're building out your designs, because it can improve your skills. But let's get into the trouble areas. where have you gone too far? Whole site designs, man, it really bums me out every single time I see a founder tweet, hey, this website, this new app, like completely copied our entire layout, our entire design, the same fonts, the same spacing, the same everything.
Yeah.
So, like, where does that go too far in your mind, Wes?
Yeah, to me, it's such a clear thing. And like, I've never been like called out by anybody or like been in trouble around this, but like, to me, it's such a clear thing, and I have a hard time sort of describing where it is. But if you're obviously blatantly ripping off the layout, like you looked at somebody else's website and you're like, I'm just gonna do that and put it in my own, that's too far, right? And like there certainly is license for being inspired and taking out aspects of it, but you just have to make it your own rather than ripping it off one to one. Because I've seen that many times before where it's super frustrating. You go back to the Vibe one. Like somebody, I forget who it was, somebody launched a new website the other day and someone's like, looks like Wes's site. And I looked at it, I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm glad that, so like I didn't go to the website and go, they're stealing my whole thing, you know? But I looked at it and go like, oh, if that even happened, coincidences exist, right? Like I'm not so big in my head to think that somebody took inspiration from it. But if that happened, they did a good job at being inspired from it, but not straight up copying it. They say, I like the feel and the vibe of this website, and I've decided to implement something that feels similar in my own website.
Yeah. You know what? I think it like you said, it is like very much a feel to it all, because there is a sense of looking at a website and you can say, oh, this website was inspired by Linear's groundbreaking website.
Yeah.
Or this website ripped off Linear's groundbreaking website. And there is a line there. And to me, that line exists when you take too many of the individual things that we mentioned at the top from one design. If you take the type scale, the fonts, the color palette, and the vibe, that's going to feel like it's totally ripped off. And so, like, even if you're not like copying the design exactly, it's still going to feel like you did copy it. So for me, I like to pull only one or two things from a particular inspiration source, and then one or two things from another, and then one or two things from another. And the artistry there is how you combine different techniques and different things from other inspiration sources rather than coming up with it all yourself, if that's what you're going for. But I do think that like when you take too many things from the one column, it can feel like there's a problem.
Totally. And like I would say like the rule is if you can screenshot a section of your website and put it right beside the one that is supposedly copying you, and if you show it to enough people, because that's the other. Sometimes people are like, this person ripped it off, and everyone's like, I don't really see it. You know, like that's kind of a popular pattern that you've seen there. And I think it's pretty clear. It's too bad that there's not like a litmus test for this type of thing, especially because like we're just saying, we're sitting here being like, yeah, like the vibe and it feels good, like there's not a very clear line. And like culturally, there's different cultures are okay with copying different amounts of things, so it's kind of hard to do it.
Yeah.
But
this
is kind of why we're saying this episode.
A funny story there. My parents had a tea store. My dad wanted to get little glasses made for the tea store, like porcelain cups for the tea that you could have in packages. And he sent them the Starbucks cup as an inspiration for size to say, like, this is the size and general feel that we wanted to have. And they sent us a whole box of testers, and they all had the Starbucks logo on them. And we were like, oh, no, we just imported a bunch of counterfeit goods. We need to destroy these immediately.
Well, see, that does have a clear litmus test.
I know,
it's trademark infringement,
Yeah, that's trademark. But you know what you're saying about
don't.
You wish there was a tool. There's definitely, like, you could build a tool that, one, looked at the prevalence of the color palette, right? You could examine the hex values. How similar are these particular hex values to the other ones? And if it's the entire palette and maybe they're just ever so slightly changed, then it's too close. In addition to the font stack, type size, you could compare all of that. It's simply computed properties, right? Theoretically, that wouldn't be that hard to build. Also, another thing that really bugs me is when people rip off text copy, like wholesale.
That's like
copy paste text. I'm not a good writer. I've never been a good writer, but I've always managed to write my own copy by don't just go to your competitor and copy and paste their copy. That to me, it feels wrong.
I've had it with my course sites quite a few times, and I understand why people do it, because they're trying to launch a course and they're just like, okay, well, like, what else do I need on the website? Oh, I need an FAQ. FAQ is the one that gets ripped off quite a bit. And I've had people like straight up copy paste it. And then I've had people just like kind of rewrite it, but keep the same like funny tone, like I had one where it's like, decided to become a heavy diesel mechanic instead of coding. I'll refund it for you. No problem. And like,
they just changed the word mechanic or something.
Shtick. Yeah, and then they kind of just rewrote it, being like, decided not to become a coder and be a farmer, no problem. Yeah. And it's like, come on, And the reason why I don't like that is because I don't want my whole, I don't know what you call that, my whole like brand of how I form things and the words and the things that I do on my course websites. I don't want that to be a shtick or a gimmick. Because once, the same thing with my parody purchasing power, I have had thousands of people copy my parody purchasing power, which I am very happy about. I love that it's catching on, and other courses are offering different prices for different countries. I love that. What I don't like is that when like a lot of people just straight up copy the banner text and the coupon codes, like it'll be like Brazil love, like that's the coupon code for Brazil, and they'll just use that. I'm like, like make your own coupon code, that's my whole vibe. And I don't want it to be like, oh, they're just using some plugin that everybody's using, and there's no uniqueness there.
Westboss has a plugin. It's the Westboss AI text. You just run it through. Yeah, you had a nice little general rule of thumb here, and I have my own. My own rule of thumb here is if the original designer would be able to tell you straight up rip them off, you've gone too far.
Yeah.
In the dance world, we talk about there's a concept of biting, and that's like in for my style of dance, it's a lot of it is like personal creativity, which is very similar to design, right? It's personal creativity. You're inventing your own things. And with the advent of YouTube, it's become really common for newer dancers to watch more creative dancers and just like copy their moves completely. And that kind of defeats the whole reason why we do it, right? It's supposed to be like a personal expression. And we always say in the dance world, you can nibble, but don't bite. You nibble.
That's great. I also like one thing you can do is you simply just ask the person, hey, my big thing is I don't want to step on your toes.
Yeah.
So like one of the examples is I don't know, about 6 months ago. I forget the name of the person. It's in my DMs. He was doing this like videos of like, how do you pronounce X, Y, and Z in like server side programming language, like Nginx and things like that. And I was like, man, we got to do that for web development, But I was like, I'm not just going to straight up come out with videos doing the same thing, but for web development, even though like you see that a lot. So I was just like, hey, like totally fine to say no. Like, would you feel weird if we did this for web development? And he's like, totally fine, dude. Like, no problem there. And like, he was really cool about it. And like many times I've had people approach me being like, hey, I don't want to step on your toes by doing something. Like, is this cool? And almost always it's like, oh yeah, totally fine. But I appreciate you reaching out to make sure there's no like weirdness around this.
The one I like a lot is where I get an email. It's like, hey, do you care if I remake your course using the same code, but just in another language, and I'll do all the recordings and I'll be coding it? And like, no, that sounds great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I actually had a guy re-record one of my courses totally in English. It was a free one, and then sell it. Like write down. I still have the video. I like because it was my JavaScript 30 course, and I start the course off by playing the drum kit that we make. I go do 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 do, and I go woo, welcome, and I'm not lying. He goes do 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 do, welcome, or like whatever. And I was just like, dude, first of all, don't take my free course and re-record it and then charge for it. Second of all, don't steal it so much that you copy my woo.
Oh my gosh. That is very wild. So where do you find inspiration? Where do you even start to look for both code, design, UX inspiration? How do you start to look for this stuff to get inspired in the first place? There's a website called Get CSS Scan. I believe CSS Scan is like a product of some sorts, but to be honest, their landing pages they've gotten me to their website, but they have not gotten me to figure out what their product is yet. But they have a couple of really neat pages, one of which is CSS box shadow examples and CSS button examples. And it's just a giant wall of button and box shadow examples. And you can quickly and easily get the CSS. To me, when I'm looking for a new button style, oftentimes I just start hacking away on a button. And I have a general idea for the feel I'm going for the button or what I want the button style to look like. And then sometimes there just ends up being a gap between what's in my brain and what I'm freehanding, because maybe I haven't put into Figma. I haven't taken the time to like really flesh it out. I just kind of have this vague idea. So then I'll go to this Get CSS Buttons example and I'll use that as a base for whatever I'm trying to do, because there's a ton of these buttons on here and they kind of fit most styles that you might want to hit with a button. And you don't have to just rip these off wholesale. You can rip them off and then start to modify them. That's why they're here. Same with box shadows. I mean, it's a great place to visualize box shadows.
Yeah, I was on this website the other day. I was doing buttons for my upcoming course, and I was just like, I need a better button. Mm-hmm. And I went to this website, and I was like, unreal. I went through 92 buttons, and I didn't find one that I'd like hit with me.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many different button designs there could possibly be.
Well, so even if they don't hit with you, you can start.
Yeah, you remix them. You start with one of the sort of feels. And what I ended up doing is I then moved to CodePen, and I did just a little search on CodePen for button or jelly button, or like just kind of like different words for things. You could sort by most popular, kind of get a look, and there's often some really neat stuff that's on there.
Yeah, CodePen is a great place to find CSS inspiration specifically. Again, the code's right there. You can look into it. You can see how they did it. You can even retype it if you want. You can copy and paste it, whatever. A resource that I've always really liked is CodeDrops. I feel like they've been around forever.
Yeah.
Like just producing kind of next level articles, demos, and stuff. And the demos, what's so great about these demos is typically they'll show, a couple of different ways of doing different techniques, even with buttons, right? They'll be like, here's 10 different buttons. And you can see those buttons. They all kind of fit a similar feel or a vibe. I believe they call them sketches. And you can just get a feel for different user interface patterns and see them in a way that like feels good. But you also get the code. So it's a great place to learn new techniques, and it's usually like very forward-thinking, adventurous techniques as well. So I really have been a big fan of Code Drops for a very long time.
Yeah, they always have such next level stuff. And it's amazing that like they still cranking them out
It's wild.
like
Yeah.
every couple days there's something new that comes out. And they also
Somehow
have an inspirational
underrated.
website roundup. Yeah, very underrated. We have a list of a million different places to get inspiration, which I really like because like I found there used to be this like website CSS Reset, and I used to always go there for like new. Was it CSS Reset? No,
No.
I forget what it is. Anyways, it was one of these websites that you could see like new websites and get inspiration from. And then I found like a lot of these like inspiration websites turned into here is a huge photo with text overlaid on top of it. And it's like that's not
Okay.
real. That's not like obviously these are nice landing pages or whatever, but it's not this is not really what I'm looking for my type of thing. And what I found is instead of like going full website, go component based, look for, okay, I'm really working on a button here. So Scott just linked up the button example. So go component by component. Obviously, I guess when you're first designing a website, you do need an overall vibe. But when it comes to, all right, now I'm doing the button, now I'm doing a layout for products, then you can kind of go component by component and say, what is this? Like I went to there's this website called bentogrids.com. I was working on a bento grid and I was like, all right, like how do people do this? What do people put in these grids? How are they responsive? And there's thousands, maybe not thousands. I think thousands of bento grids on here, hundreds. And just an awesome website for seeing what other people have done and different ideas. And you can pick 2 or 3 little yummies out of each of those and make your own.
Yeah. Make your own yummy out of the bigger yummy. Dribbble for a long time was the place. I haven't been to Dribbble in a long time.
Yeah, what happened to Dribbble?
For serious web stuff. I think they got sold, and then I don't know if it ever really, they took a long time on updating their design. And now I think it is just maybe a little soulless. I have not been to Dribbble in a very long time, but I know designers who, ended up really making their career on Dribbble by posting their stuff, getting jobs, and then people reach out. I've found a designer for Level Up tutorials on Dribbble way back in the day. I needed a component built. So, potentially Dribbble is still a good place to find that stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned that like sites like, so we're talking design inspiration, but you can, view the code obviously for any of these things. Site Inspire has long been a really good place to see adventurous designs, but like you said, Wes, it's mostly landing pages. There's another one that's mostly landing pages too called sasslandingpage.com or One Page Love. These are all really good
One Page Love is good.
Yeah, for seeing these designs. But in my mind, these are kind of like, these are like a fashion runway. So you go to the runway show and you see some designer's clothes. That's not stuff you're wearing. This is just stuff that they're showing off some cool techniques. Now, granted, these are real websites and they all have a purpose. But for my purposes, these websites are, for all intents and purposes, like a fashion show. And what I'm looking on like Site Inspire specifically, right, there's a lot of wild art sites. And what I'm looking for from Site Inspire is to be inspired by typography, by color, more so than this brutalist layout with a bunch of images flopped onto a page for like an art house or something. I'm building the target version of the runway dress is what I'm doing.
That's a really good way to put it. I like that a lot. I had sort of written off a lot of these like really fancy ones because of exactly what you just said. But yeah, you still can pick up color schemes and approaches to them. This Bento Grids one is also really good because these Bento Grids are often on websites that themselves are really well designed. Quite a few purple linear knockoffs on this.
Quite a few.
But some good ones on there as well. That's the other frustrating thing is that like the designers at Linear did such a wild and good job that literally their own style has become like a meme or a gimmick. It's not bad style. It still looks really, really nice. But it's so good that now so many websites now look like Linear. And like poor Linear, like what do you do then, you know?
Totally devalued the greatness of the Linear site.
Exactly,
And I've seen that on a couple others now too. There's like a new style I think everybody is kind of aware of, where it's like a paragraph text and there's like icons in the paragraph text, and there's a very specific way these sites look, and that there's like I'm seeing that now where like it's completely disposable. I'll send you some. I don't want to call any of them out because I don't know where it started, but it's definitely one that's been aped a whole bunch like Linear has. Another great place for font inspiration is Typewolf. This is a site that's been around for a long time that shows font pairings. And what's cool about Typewolf is that they show you how fonts can work together. So they'll typically say, this is the body font, this is the heading font, and this is what they look like together. And you can even subscribe to, I think you have to pay for some font lists and stuff like that to be able to get like pre-made typography packages from there, which if you want to take all the guesswork out of it, that's a good place to do it. Mobbin is a website that we had in our newsletter somewhat recently. So if you were in the Syntax newsletter, you can get to it at syntax.fm/newsletter. You would have gotten this resource already, but mobbin.com has an inspiration gallery. And like you mentioned, you can search all kinds of things, from apps to individual screens to UI elements. You can say, I want cards, and then it gives you cards. I want an app that is a fitness app, and then it gives you fitness apps. It's a really cool resource. You do have to sign in. There is a pricing aspect to this, but it's pretty cool.
Browse. So a free plan gives you 8 apps and websites.
Yes, limited search results. So you
can't go, and then $10.
This is the one if you're doing like a so it's $10 for a month. If you're building a website, cough up $10, get your inspiration, cancel the subscription.
Interesting. Yeah, it's curated. And that's the other thing, is like you're paying for somebody with good taste.
Yes.
To like obviously browse a web and find them, but like probably take in submissions and go through them.
Totally.
Wow.
And another one, Hover States, which is a cool website. I have not seen this one before, but it's a lot of really cool interactive application. A lot of, again, fancy artistic stuff. I love creatives.com/internet-gems is a really cool one too. These are a little bit more practical in terms of landing pages, a little less Site Inspire, but also you'll see some of the same stuff as you'll see on Site Inspire. Definitely aspects of this are, big landing page stuff, but definitely a good place to get UI inspiration. Let's talk about UX though. I have a few for you here. goodui.org, goodui.org, component.gallery, open-ui, nicely-done.club. OpenUI is really good because we've talked about it a whole bunch on this show. It's talking more about like HTML patterns and like what are the types of ways that these components typically work. And goodui.org is also very similar, where it's more or less showing you about A/B testing on various designs and what works and what doesn't work. So improve your UI with winning and losing A/B tests, and it'll show you directly which 2 designs they're comparing and why one worked and why one didn't. The Nicely Done Club is pretty neat as far as websites go. Again, this is also more of just like a big list, but explore 530 plus best-in-class SaaS apps, web apps, their screens, flow, user flows, and UI components. So this one gets into as micro as components, but also like UI flows.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, I found UI flows to be very helpful on this because let's say you're building a subscription app. What does that typically look like if you've never done it before? Well, you could fire up some app and subscribe, or you could see how a bunch of other people do it.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I hate so much is when you get an app and you get those stupid little hover things. Like they're like, welcome to the app. Let me put 14 different bubbles over top of the buttons to let you know what they do. I'm like, get out of here. Let me use the app,
Stop. Yeah,
I know how to use the internet. If it's so hard to use, I shouldn't need your bubble, I don't mind the tips. When you're waiting for something to save, they throw up a little tip. Mm-hmm. I like those. Photoshop has that because Photoshop is slow as hell. They throw a little tip up. You read a tip while you're waiting for it to save or something, and you learn a thing or two.
Yeah, I know. The worst too is when it's like maybe like 8 or so wizards deep, and you're just like, please stop. Or you
Yeah,
you
please.
go to click on new post or something, and then it throws up another one. You're like, no, I got it.
Yeah. I don't want any wizards. And then
Yes.
like they like save the wizard progression in like local storage. So you like sign in on a new app and it like, or like the wizard and the emails newsletter sign up form and the cookie banner all battling it out. It's like, please get this stuff off my screen and let me use the app.
No wizards, no Merlins, no sorcerers, no warlocks. I don't want any of that stuff in my app. Let's talk about capturing inspiration here really quick. This episode's getting a
Yes.
little tasty. I take a lot of screenshots. I throw them in Notion. I throw them in Obsidian. Wes, you have Twitter bookmarks. Twitter bookmarks are great for that type of thing. Even Instagram bookmarking, any social media bookmarking in general is a good place for that, especially if you can tag it right away. Bookmarking websites. Hey, you can bookmark websites. I don't know if people know that. I remember Delicious. I used to use Delicious pretty heavily for this, but I have not even thought about that app in a long time.
Yeah, Delicious is crazy. I use like when I'm designing something or like if I'm thinking about designing something, I'll just take screenshots and throw them into Figma for the design that I'm working on.
Hmm.
So I can kind of get a lot of, I always try to make sure that I can get the URL in so I can go back to the website and reference it in the future. What I would really like is some sort of like AI based thing that
Dude,
automatic and
I thought
like it
about
would
this today.
automatically.
I thought about this exact thing today.
All right, let me finish what it is.
No.
Like a screenshot, and then it will automatically process it, and then it will automatically detect what is in it and auto categorize it based on like website, UI flow, green, orange,
Yeah.
and then you can sort and filter based on all that stuff.
Bro, this is it. You didn't even have to finish because I had the exact same thought. Tag it. You got to tag it by color. Tag it by
Yeah.
what the product is on the site. Tag it by even the type of layout. Tag by whatever UI components are featured here.
The mood, yeah, and you can find similar because then you can use the vector embeddings to find similar ones to that. I think that would be a really cool application, and like ideally something that also ingests iOS screenshots because
Mhm.
sometimes on iOS I hate people that take screenshots the most, but sometimes the only way to like I want to save that for later is take a screenshot of it. And then like I want it to all come into my own personal Pinterest where I don't have to manage it, I just want to dump a whole bunch of garbage and have it auto sort and filter itself.
Mm.
That's gotta exist. Somebody build that.
Maybe I'll build it. I don't have any time.
Yes.
Either way, just make it easy. AI tool, that sort of stuff. Okay, cool. Well, that's all I have for now. Again, don't steal people wholesale. That's not cool. That's not nice. That is not ethical. But you can be inspired by what people are doing. And I think that's definitely a worthwhile technique for getting better at both design and development. I don't have anything else. Do you, Wes?
Nope. That's it. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you later.
Peace.
Peace.